So, hey guys, today we're going to be talking about just zombie cards in general. And in terms of zombie cards, do you guys know how many zombies can actually uh, perform a monster reborn type effect? If we're looking at that, it's actually a decent amount of cards. For example, Vampire Sucker has such an effect. So, Vampire Sucker has the effect of special summoning one of your opponent's monsters to the field, and that effect is not tied to the draw effect. The draw is just a trigger whenever any zombie monster or monster is special summoned from the graveyard, I guess. And technically, it doesn't even have to be a zombie, just any monster, really. So it could just randomly trigger against, let's see, I guess, Altergeist? Sure, that would trigger Vampire Sucker. And I believe what's his name again? Chaos Dragon, Chaos Ruler, the chaotic magical ruler, or whatever. That name was really long. I don't fully remember. But Mr. Mill 5 special summon myself from the graveyard by banishing a light and a dark. That guy. That would also trigger Sucker. But in terms of zombie monsters that just reborn themselves, that there are like none, surprisingly enough. So we have Mezuki, which is still like pretty good, right? So if you combine this with Zombie World, technically every single monster in the graveyard will be a zombie. So you can monster reborn any monster in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So let's think of a couple. Let's see. Blue Eyes White Dragon. We can reborn that in Zombie World if we happen to have all the conditions met, which is actually a lot of conditions, honestly. So we need whatever the card is that we want to reborn in the graveyard. Then we need Mezuki in the graveyard. Then we need Zombie World on the field. So that's already three conditions that we have to meet, and that doesn't include stuff like, do you have normal summon? Can we do this without normal summon? Do we need normal summon for something? All of that type of stuff still not really accounted for, right? But with this, we could technically, quote unquote, summon any monster. Well, I mean, as long as it allows it to be special summoned. So, for example, if we just did extra foolish burial, we wouldn't be able to reborn that target because it was not properly summoned. But if something is properly summoned, we could also bring back our synchros. And the other issue, I guess, with this card specifically is that it's, well, yeah, it doesn't have a hard once per turn. So, yeah, that's a thing. But if we're looking at zombie monsters that reborn themselves, we have the Doom King Validrock himself, which comes back every single standby phase via his own effect, as long as there's any field spell in any field zone. So, effectively, in a Zombie World mirror, Zombie World is equally as useful for both players, which is kind of interesting. Because Doom King, well, yeah, you have the negate any zombie monster that activates their effect or whatever, or negate any activated zombie monster's effect. That effect's actually like really jank to explain, so let's leave it at that. And then if your opponent controls a field spell or you control a field spell, well, then you can reborn the Doom King, which makes this pretty funny in the mirror and also pretty oppressive because as it happens, like a lot of the time, your boss monsters are just like super effective into your own archetype, which makes mirrors just suck. I don't know if it's like supposed to be like that by design, but just for example, if we have Vanquished Soul, all of your removal is non-targeting. And do you know the weakness for Vanquished Soul? Why it's non-targeting removal, of course. So, for example, if we have Rosin tag out for Borger, that'd be great against. Let's see, what's a targeted form of removal now? Um, hmm. I guess we'll just say Imperm or Raigeki Break, like some sort of effect like that. But if we were to then just, hit hit up with Mirror Jade as the lowest chain link, then we'll always be losing our monster, and you don't have the ability to get another monster on the field for the most part, unless you have your three of what's it called again? Stake your soul. Yeah, that's the only way you can extend from going into a Mirror Jade here. And of course, we have non-target Pop, non-target Book of Moon, non-target uh, Raigeki, just for all of our Vanquished Soul cards, allowing, I guess, well, not allowing much play to be happening, I guess. And then there is Eldlik the Golden Lord, and I believe aside from those two, nothing actually reborns from the graveyard. Well, not themselves in terms of zombie monsters. Well, actually, kind of. There are also, I guess, the Plague Spreader type monsters, which are just kind of like retrains of Plague Spreader, and also like Plague Spreader itself, Mad Mauler. Those guys reborn themselves from the graveyard, but they're not really boss monsters. They're kind of just like tuners, and they kind of suck for the most part. The best one currently being Mad Mauler. So pretty awkward, I'd say. And then you have very few monsters that actually, aside from like Mizuki, that allow you to reborn your other monsters. So Vampire Sucker reborns only your opponent's monsters, which is like simultaneously useful and not useful. Useful in the sense that, you're going to get the draw, right? But also in the sense that the monster is not negated, so it can activate its effects and it's summoned to your opponent's field. So also not very useful in a sort of way, I guess. So in terms of monster reborns, you have, I want to say, about 3 good ones, probably. So one of my personal favorite zombie monsters would be uh, Jacko Bullen. Jacko Bullen, it's kind of like iffy now, but it has the rare effect to special summon itself, so you wouldn't need to like send it to the graveyard and then special summon it or anything. And it's also possible to special summon off of Glow Up Bloom. And then it has the Monster Reborn effect, which targets either graveyard, and with Zombie World active, it allows you to Monster Reborn any monster from either graveyard, and it will be banished when it leaves the field. So the idea behind this is obviously that whatever you take, your opponent will not get back no matter what, because it'll get banished. Unless now we're in the modern era and we have like Malice and stuff, right? Malice is like the only deck that would benefit off of, I guess, you trying to pull and take their monsters from the graveyard. But Bolin over time is still pretty nasty, and it's just got a pretty good effect in general. So for example, if I have like, let's say a Baron, and I Baron negate one of your boss monsters, I can take that boss monster. Well, I guess the downside is that Bolin can only be activated during specifically the main phase, and not just the main phase, but your opponent's main phase, which makes it kind of just suck. And if you thought, huh, why would they do this? Then they did it again with Red Eye's Zombie Dragon Lord, where it's only during your opponent's turn that you can do a Monster Reborn with this. For some reason, zombies just are not allowed to reborn on their own turn. Like, it feels like a deck like Ryzeal or Malice is more thematically zombie than zombies. Like, a lot of decks feel that way to me now, personally, right? So, if I send a zombie monster to the graveyard, they have pretty much, for the most part, no effect. They do mostly nothing. There are some that do things, but the majority, they don't. No graveyard effect whatsoever. And then if there is a graveyard effect, it requires another monster, so it's not necessarily just affecting itself either. And it just requires targets that you like. Where am I supposed to get these targets from? So if we go with like Changshi, for example, to resolve Changshi, I would need to send Changshi to the graveyard. Then I would need to send a card in the graveyard, and then I would need a third card to banish Changshi, because Changshi doesn't do like any of this. So yeah, after you figure that out, you can special summon Changshi, I guess. And yeah, they all have to be specifically zombie cards as well, because why not, I guess. And of course, I forgot about this, but this actually does have a monster reborn type effect for itself. But you know, it's very few and far between for some reason. Like in terms of monster reborn type stuff, like honestly, it feels like Promethean Princess is kind of thematically what you would want a zombie monster to be, right? It special summons itself back, and then it special summons a guy back, even if you just disregard the pop effect, right? So you could easily, like, for Promethean Princess, if you want it for like the just like zombie type, you would just change Promethean Princess to a zombie monster, then you would just change the lock to be a zombie lock instead, and it's like practically the same thing. But zombie never gets cards like this, so yeah, just suffering. In terms of like monster reborn effects, I guess like technically Red Eyes Zombie Necro Dragon also has a reborn type effect, and you also have a reborn type effect with Red Eyes Zombie Dragon, but these are trash because they require the battle phase to occur. And now that I think about it, Immortal Dragon also has a reborn effect, but that requires a zombie monster to be destroyed by battle. That one is not that bad because it has another effect tied to it instead of just the battle effect, I guess. So that's something. The level modulate effect is actually kind of terrible though. Like, it's not terrible all the time, but just for example, you can never ever send Changxi because of how the level modulation works. So for Immortal Dragon, we don't have it in this list because this is a much older list. But alright. The fact here is to send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, this card's level becomes the difference in the original levels of that monster in this card. Because it says original level, you know, the difference between 0 and 0 does not exist because they are the same, so therefore you cannot ever send a level 6 for this. Which is, you know, awkward. Uh, very awkward, I'd say. Sometimes you do really want to send Changxi with us, but you know, I guess you can manage not sending Changxi, I suppose. But alright. Aside from this, there was one other card with a kind of good effect for monster reborning, I guess. We have the Mayakashi Link 3, which is a UR. And also it's a Link 3. Not like a Link 2, Link 3. This card is special summon, you target one effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effect. That effect's like whatever. Then we have quick effect, you banish this card from your graveyard, special summon one of your zombie synchro monsters that is banished or in your graveyard. So the downside obviously is that this only works on zombie synchros. So what if I don't have a zombie synchro I want to reborn here? You know, then what? What am I going to reborn then? Absolutely nothing, right? Just zombie cards feel absolutely cooked. It feels like they're extremely worried that they might break Mizuki, and Mizuki might become like an issue, which I mean, that's kind of valid, but like Mizuki to even set up for a dumbass FTK setup, you would need to be playing like a bajillion garnets, and then not only would you need those garnets for the most part, you would then need access to all of the cards as well. Like, you can't even really access anything with Unizombie, right? Unizombie reads completely insane, but if you like really think about Unizombie and Gozuki together, for example, it doesn't actually get you as far as you might want to go. So we have send a zombie monster from your deck and one from hand, and increase level by 1. And there is no cost for this, unfortunately, and it targets. So the targeting effect, or the targeting part of the effect, that doesn't matter at least, because of the order and how the card's phrased, right? So we would send first, and we would have to send specifically, and then adjust the level, because that's the final thing that happens. Even if we remove the target from the field, it'll still resolve. and still do the send part of the effect, which is the most important part of the effect, I guess. But you know, if I were to just want to do a small combo with Gozuki, it's actually a 3-card combo. It's not even a 2-card combo with this. So I would need to do send Gozuki, and then I would need another card to reborn Gozuki, because there's nothing that you can send off of Unizombie that's useful unless Hulk is legal, right? Because then you'd be able to send, I guess, like a Plague Spreader or something, reborn that, and then make Hulk. And you know what? That doesn't even really lead into anything except for like Hulk Degda, or I guess like Hulkdon, which is just terrible. That this is just an awful way to go into this, in my opinion. But I mean, it gets there, right? But okay, then you have Gozuki, and then we can let's assume we put Gozuki on the field, and we sent Mezuki from hand. Then we can reborn the Gozuki. Then Gozuki can send a guy. Then we can do nothing with the Gozuki, because even if we link off or synchro with the Uni Zombie, it doesn't matter what target we're making. We would need another card in hand to trigger Gozuki's effect to banish and also special summon from hand. So overall, like if we want to resolve Gozuki, that's like 3-card combo territory, which is just pretty depressing in its own sort of way. It can at least special summon technically any zombie monster. So like the Golden Lord could be special summoned off of Gozuki, but like what's the point? All of the zombie cards just essentially just suck ass, so they don't do anything. And of course, if you were to reborn a guy or just whatever you want to send off of Gozuki, it's pointless because there's not a single zombie monster that does anything by itself in the graveyard, at least, right? So if we go, well, I mean, the best thing would technically be, I guess, like Banshee, and then hope that Zombie World affects your opponent in a negative way. So that's about all we could do. If we had Hulk, though, we could summon Bloom and then go into Doom King at least. But you know, since it's banned, not even worth talking about here. If we look at the vampire cards, let's see. This has a graveyard effect, I believe. Let's see. During the main phase, quick effect, you banish this card from your graveyard and then normal summon a vampire monster. Requires a vampire monster in hand. And then we have this. If this card is in the graveyard, you can send one vampire card from your hand or face up field to the graveyard. So this requires you to have, once again, another vampire monster. Then if we go to familiar, you can send one vampire card from your hand or face a field to the graveyard. Special summon this card. Yet another card. So obviously, not a 1-card combo. I mean, at least these cards are 2-card combos, so it's more effective to do, or more efficient to do literally just anything, right? And you know, of course, the way these cards work, that means if I have a 2-card combo, they will die to a single hand trap and trade 2 for 1, which is just utterly unplayable. You know, just what are you supposed to do about that if we just trade insanely poorly like that? Just absolutely horrendous. Yeah, and that's how all the zombie cards work, really. They don't. So just for example, you know, if I were to do Foolish Burial for Uni Zombie and then Foolish Burial for Mezuki, like those are technically not the best targets necessarily, but let's say that that's what I do, okay? And then my opponent hits me with, well, it wouldn't have to be a Bestial on the Uni Zombie, but you know, if they do something to that Uni Zombie, I go -2 in hand after using 2 Foolish Burials, leaving me with 3 cards in hand. And also, all of these guys like require the normal summon, which sucks. So yeah, if you normal summon a guy, you just get stuck, and you don't really have anything you can do. Well, in terms of like extension, because these guys just get stuck in your hand, and the game isn't slow enough for you to even get an opportunity to send your cards to the graveyard, which you would probably have to have done by battle. Like, let's say we have Uni Zombie, it gets negated by Imperm, Ash, whatever. Then the next turn we would probably have to do like, well, we would have to pray that we top deck a good card, and then we would have to like normal summon Mezuki, and then either link it off or crash it, and then reborn Uni Zombie. And you know, at every single point of all of this, while our combo dies to one single hand trap, if your opponent opened two, that's good enough to deal with you for 5 turns. Just to put that into perspective, right? That is more than the duration of a lot of duels. And you know, they are drawing cards, they're also like actively comboing and all that. And just straight up, like, there are archetypes that play how I would want Zombie to play, and they feel more zombie-like than Zombie itself, if that makes sense. Like, if we just put some zombie paint on Malice, like straight up, and just turn Malice into, for example, a zombie link deck instead, like, would you be able to tell the difference that hard? Because, you know, for a zombie deck, it'd be bad under macro or like fissure, just all of that type of stuff. It's at least like kind of playable. You can do some stuff here, and also, you know, a lot of archetypes honestly just have like random monster reborn type effects just hidden everywhere. For example, with Unchained, you have the effect to reborn with Yama. You have the traps effect to reborn. A good amount of your Unchained cards just reborn themselves for fun. Just why don't zombie cards do that? These are fiend monsters, right? And you also, of course, have the generic monster reborn that locks you, being Muckraker. And you know, zombie players would kill for a card like this. You get to discard a card and get like one of your bricks out of your hand and into the graveyard. You would hella want this, and you would just reborn any. Well, in this case, it would be any like zombie monster you wanted. Do we even have a way to do that on our own turn? Only exactly Mezuki, apparently. And you know, another reason we can't get this is because then with Zombie World, technically you'd be able to reborn any monster, right? But then again, you know, we already have cards that just reborn genuinely anything, like Yugaris, for example, which has the effect to genuinely monster reborn any card. So we could reborn Arcana Force the world with this. Just cause, I guess. Why not? And then, well, yeah. All of the cards are essentially just too inefficient, and they rely on other cards too hard. So, for example, even with Mezuki, like if I wanted to reborn Jinzo, for example, right, that would rely on me activating Zombie World, getting Jinzo into the graveyard, getting Mezuki into the graveyard. So Mezuki right now, to have any effect, requires you to have 3 other cards in rotation. So it's like basically a crappy 4-card combo at this point. That's how it feels, anyways. So all this does is it summons Jinzo. Yeah, I guess, right? And yep, that's my grievance with zombies right now, I guess. Zombie decks don't even really feel like zombie decks because you're not really summoning stuff from the graveyard. Like, just in general, what am I summoning? Unchained is probably going to special summon cards from the graveyard more than my zombie deck will. And what else was there? Like Altergeist? Altergeist. The 1-card combo with Meluseek feels like it could be a zombie kind of combo in the sense that, you know, if they were zombie monsters and not spellcasters, they're reborning themselves quite a few times, are they not? We're going like uh reborn with Malwisp. Then we have the reborn with um what's called Promethean Princess, and then Promethean Princess will reborn itself on the next turn, and then you also reborn the Hextia on the next turn as well. So in terms of just summoning monsters back from the graveyard, I think you do it like 3, 4, maybe 5 times. But actually, now that I think about it, technically the Ambler Whale that you're going to be making can also reborn a card, and then the Promethean Princess can reborn another card on the next turn as well. So yeah, it's sure like it's not just specifically zombie world, just like zombie cards in general. They don't even feel like they don't even really feel like zombies. They just feel like utter garbage, I guess, is what I'm saying. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.